Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of Trust Talks, brought to you by Renergetics Consulting, where we transform people, transform businesses. If you're interested in knowing more about us, go ahead and log on to www.renergetics.com. I'm your host, Aishwarya Subramanian, and I welcome you to Trust Talks. Trust Talks is a series focusing on trust, where the intent of the show is to highlight and uh, look at the importance of trust in leaders, teams, organizations, and community. But before we get started, I'd like to hear from you guys. Where are you joining us from? So go ahead and type in the comment section and let us know. Where are you coming in? Hi, Harish. Nice to see you. Hello, Sergeant. Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Dan. Prerna. Hello, all. Hi, Junko from Singapore. Nick from Toronto. Thank you so much for joining us on our episode 2 of Trust Talks. Now, as we go along the show, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the comments section, and we will be sure to answer them at the end of our show. So, in today's episode, we'll be looking at healing trust and rebuilding trust. Rebuilding trust in ourselves, in each other, and in the world at large. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming our co-founders. First, I'd like to welcome Jessica Sargent. Jessica Sargent is the co-founder of Renergetics Consulting. She is partners with Rainer, a trust building consultancy, the founding member of John Maxwell team. She's an OD consultant, professional speaker, psychotherapist, and an EIT consultant. She's also a Rainer certified master trust building practitioner. Welcome, Jessica. Okay, so I'd also like to go ahead and introduce Subramanian Narayan. Subramanian Narayan is the co-founder of Renergetics Consulting, partners with Rainer, a trust building consultancy. He's also the founding member of the John Maxwell team, an OD consultant, professional speaker, and an executive coach. He is also a Rainer certified master trust building practitioner. Hi, Subramanian.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I also have the pleasure of welcoming two guests on our show. I'd like to welcome Dr. Michelle Rainer and Dr. Dennis Rainer. Dr. Dennis and Michelle Rainer are global pioneers of trust building in the workspace. They are internationally sought after trust building consultant, speakers, and executive coaches. They're co-founders of Rainer, a trust building consultancy, and they have co-authored 2 award-winning best-selling books on trust and betrayal in the workplace and rebuilding trust in workplace. The awards that they have include the top 100 thought leaders, and they've also been awarded by the World HRD Congress. So welcome, Dr. Michelle and Dr. Dennis Rainer.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. We're delighted.
Thank you. And I'm going to hand over the reins to Subramanian and Jessica. And I'm very much excited for this engaging conversation with both Dennis and Michelle. So over to you guys.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you so much. Michelle, Dennis, it's a pleasure seeing you live on the Trust Talks episode 2.
Thank you so much, Subramanian and Jesse. We are just so thrilled to be here with you, and we're imagining that we're actually sitting over there with you at this moment in time, and so grateful for this opportunity to connect live.
Absolutely. And we've been looking forward to this moment for a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. And how's the weather there today?
Well, the weather is sunny, bright, and about minus 12 degrees centigrade, given that most of the world uses centigrade. It's 16 degrees Fahrenheit here.
We have the wonderful energy of snow, Jesse. The snow is about 3 feet high at this moment in time.
And the skiing is great.
That's why you see us both sitting here with our warm sweaters.
Wow, I can imagine. All right, so we are excited to have this conversation with you. And if you're ready, we can get started.
Sure.
Oh, we're always ready to talk about trust, Jesse.
All right.
I'm loving the pairing of the colors, both Dennis and Michelle. Love the pairing of the colors.
Well, I thank you, Subramanian. We always want to bring our best forward for you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. In fact, the energy that you exude is reaching all right over to India and across the world. I can feel it.
Well, I think that, Jesse, that's what happens when trust is being built. You know, the four of us have been working together for several years, and this is the very first year in a very long time that we've not actually been together.
Physically,
we
yes.
always kick off a new year with several days together in Mumbai, and this is the first time we've not been able to do that. Yet, you know, when there's that connection of trust and those relationships run deep, there's really nothing that can separate the connection and bring to life the sustainability of that energy that is always present when trust is present.
Sure, because when trust is present, the energy is high, people are collaborating and communicating and connecting and engaging with one another. And hey, it's not work, it's fun.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right. So my first question to you, Dennis and Michelle. So RENA Trust Building is considered the pioneers, the global authority on workplace trust building for over 30 plus years now. And I'm curious, what inspired you? What made you dedicate over 30 years of your life's work towards trust building?
Well, it's interesting, Jessica, because when we first started out, we were actually generalists, and we were both studying for our doctorates, and we were working full-time and going to school full-time, and also raising two little boys at the same time. And so we had a plate full, to say the least. But one of the things that we noticed when we went into work with our clients is they were concerned about, you know, performance and raising engagement and collaboration and teamwork and communication with one another. And it was very focused on performance. And we were curious about, well, what did trust and trust building play in that equation? And so we actually used our doctoral dissertations to begin the research. And I say to begin the research on trust and trust building.
The other thing that we noticed in those early formative years is when organizations, when leaders would hire us, they often, as Dennis was mentioning, were focused on performance, which is quite understandable because performance is necessary to drive business results. So every leader has a need for people to perform. And the truth is, people want to perform. Yet leaders came to us with struggles. You know, they had a hard time understanding why strategies at times were stalling out, or change efforts were not producing results. And they would notice that people tended to struggle at times to collaborate. There would be silos. So when Dennis and I would conduct some of the organizational assessments, we often would hear people tell us the number one dynamic that they experienced that was blocking their ability to perform at their highest level and to do their best work with one another was the absence of trust. And Dennis and I used our doctoral dissertations to help us more fully understand that dynamic. But then we just kept on going, and following our formal degrees, we conducted research in 67 organizations in 19 industries over a 4-year period of time. We interviewed 367 leaders and conducted focus groups with hundreds of people. And it was during that period that we began to discover and feel the deep, deep human need we all have for trust. So that really what happened for us as an early stage process to become educated so we could be effective consultants, we were propelled to go further and further, and what emerged has become our life's work.
Absolutely. And so it's been a journey over the last 30 years because we continued the research, and we continued because we saw that leaders and their teams and their organizations not just collaborated better together, they produced outstanding financial results as well as performance.
Yeah, so that's wonderful, Dennis and Michelle. This is one aspect of it which always inspires me and Jesse, because if somebody spends 30 years of their life, it's wonderful, amazing. And I have always got that inspiration from both of you. And our Trust Talks was actually inspired from both of you as well. So thank you so much for that. And we continue to be inspired with both of you as we continue our partnership. So we have lots of questions. Go ahead, Michelle. You wanted to say something.
Well, and thank you, Subramanian.
Yes.
You know, we continue to be inspired as well. And we will never forget the journey you made to Vermont to meet Dennis and spend time with Dennis, and what was seeded at that moment. And then our trips to India and time with you and Jesse traveling all throughout India, you know, are seeds that were planted, and together we continue to nurture them, and gives us inspiration as well. And we're just so grateful for the two of you to join us in this journey to bring trust into and throughout the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are definitely beautiful memories, and I think our associations are continue to be memorable for me and Jesse. And I still remember my trip to Vermont, and I was touched when Dennis drove all the way from Stowe to Burlington to receive me. So very, very great start to that. And little did we expect we will go as far as we did and continue.
Well, it was both my pleasure, but also we've just begun our journey together. Because we have a lot of work to do here. I mean, let's face it, now more than ever, and I know I said this 30 years ago to Michelle, but now more than ever, the world needs trust, healing, and renewal, and it needs all of us here on this call and the listening audience to bring this important work and message to the world.
Absolutely. And like we keep saying it, Trust Talks is basically to bring out the importance and impact in front of the people and get people to realize the impact and the importance that it has in leaders, teams, organizations, and not just that, but the larger community. And I think it is such powerful, so much powerful as it looks like it's just 5-letter word, but when you start diving deep, I both me and Jessica have continued to be amazed with the profound work that you guys have done. But I think it has also had the same impact on everybody who has joined us in that journey. So great thing there. So one of the questions that we wanted to check with you was, How did you translate your academic research about trust into the RENA trust building model and a thriving business? So, can you please share your experience and stories behind the profound model?
Oh, that's a great question, Subramanian, and thank you so much for asking it. The development of the three dimensions was something that unfolded over that initial research period over this 4-year period of time. When Dennis and I literally sat down and interviewed 367 leaders and then drew upon our action research in our consulting endeavors throughout the world in focus groups and having conversations with people to learn from their own experience what trust meant to them, and to hear and discover from people and their own experiences the actual behaviors that build trust.
Yes, those three dimensions actually came from the synthesis of those 367 initial interviews with leaders, because we asked them, what does trust mean to you? And how do you build it? And of course, trust means different things to different people. It's clearly emotionally provocative, and it is often defined as an abstract, yet we know and we feel that there's only one way that it is built or broken, and that's how we show up and behave. It's our behavior that we're talking about.
And 30 years ago, Subramanian and Jessica, there was very, very little in the research around what trust meant. There was a preponderance amount in the research that highlighted the critical role trust played in team performance, highlighted the critical role trust played in leadership credibility and leadership integrity, was very, very heavy research on the role of trust in a learning organization. But there was really a tremendous gap in the research in literature around what did trust really mean and how did one earn it. So we went after the intention to fill that gap.
Yes.
Because across the world, there's one thing every human being shares. Regardless of where we live or what we do, each and every one of us has a very deep need to be trusted and to trust in others. It is not something that is nice to have. It is a deep human need. It is essential. So helping people understand what they can do to have that need met requires that together we help them grow in their awareness of trust, what it means, and help them learn the behaviors that they can practice, the actions they can demonstrate, the steps they can take to bring to life the meaning of that deep need.
Because humans, particularly now during this pandemic time, we have found that the human need for connection is universal. And there's been such a loss of this need for connection. Well, the need is still there, but the connecting has been obviously put on hold, to say the least. And trust is foundational to that connection. And so we really, way back when, and we continue to really more deeply strive to understand what is this thing and how do we build it. As we've seen on the model, we've found that there's 3 dimensions. Trust of character, we basically do what we say we're going to do. And there are 6 behaviors there. There's trust of communication. We speak openly and honestly and transparently with one another. And trust of capability. We acknowledge the skills and abilities of one another and leverage those in serving each other, and more importantly, in serving our clients and our customers.
So true. While you were talking, I was also flashing the model of the RENA trust model. And so the audience was getting an insight of that model as well. And there's been some great comments coming from the audience. Usha says trust is integral in any one-to-one dialogue and relationship, be it official or personal, and so well said. And Anupriya says that capability, character, and communication, 3 pillars of trust, and she's giving a thumbs up for that. So fair bit of audience engagement. I also have Sargent saying, amazing to hear the kind of research Dennis and Michelle have done in this field. So thank you so much, audience, and continue to put your comments, questions on the comments section. And Geeta says, very interesting model. Welcome. So Jesse, do you have...
Yeah, I think I'd like to hear Michelle has something to say.
Oh, I was just going to comment on, thank you for the, I'm sorry, the gentleman's name has just gone off the screen, the commentary about the research. It's essential that we draw upon research and we continue to research on an ongoing basis because trust is so essential. Thank you, Sajan. Because trust is so essential, we can never take it for granted. We cannot make any assumptions about it. And those of us who are dedicated to bringing trust to the world, Jesse and Subramanian, you're our partners and you're master practitioners. So you know the importance of how essential it is that we responsibly help people understand and equip them. So we feel a very deep responsibility to continue our research because trust makes such an enormous difference in the business's ability to perform, but also for people to have joy and satisfaction in their life and in their overall well-being as human beings.
Harish had a question about the 6 behaviors. I think he was talking about trust of character.
Oh.
And if you could flash the model back on, I'll just take at a high level, Harish, what each of those are. So under trust of character, managing expectations, making sure the implicit is explicit, making sure that we are clear on what we expect of each other, but also what can be expected of ourselves. Establishing boundaries, how clear, particularly during times of change and transition, how clear are the roles and the responsibilities of a job and their descriptions really embedded into the people who are charged to do those roles. The third is delegating appropriately. All right. So if we delegate a task, a job, a project, do we give people not only the authority and the responsibility to do the job, but do we also support them with resources in order to carry out that function? Encouraging mutually serving intentions, that goes with win-win. Are we in it together? Are we aligned on purpose? Are we headed towards the same direction?
Looking out for the best
interest of one another and the business. Okay, they're
and
not
the community.
And the community. They're not separate. They're together. And then, of course, keeping agreements. Do we do what we say we're going to do? Do we deliver as promised? And then being consistent. How predictable are we? Because when there's a sense of predictability, whether it's trusting behavior or even distrusting, at least we can know that we can either trust or not trust a certain behavior. But generally speaking, to build trust, we need to be generally predictable in how we engage with one another. These are the behaviors that build trust of character. This is the starting point of any both business and, quite frankly, personal relationship.
Yes.
I hope that answers the question, Harish.
Thank you. There's a few more comments that are coming in. Himadri says, glad to tune in to folks who have put in decades of work on understanding and decoding trust for all of us to practice. Thanks, Reina and Subbu, for the invite. You're welcome, Himadri, and thank you for that comment. Anita says, trust is perceived different across cultures. I am a Canadian now, living in India, and experience the difference. Thoughts? That's a great prompt, Anita, and I don't know whether you read our minds, because that's exactly is going to be our question. So let me also give that question to them. How universal and relevant is your work across regions and cultures? Would love to hear your experience. So that's exactly what Anita had also.
Great. Thank you, Anita. And Dennis and I live just an hour and a half from the Canadian border, and we miss visiting Canada.
Yeah, we miss going to Montreal or Toronto.
And it's a beautiful question. So our work over the last 30 years, we've been very blessed to have had the opportunity to work all over the world. And what we would like to offer is the 3 dimensions of trust, and the 16 behaviors that build them are universally applied. Part of the learning journey when leaders are leading, helping their people to build high trust cultures, is to discover some of the different ways we may practice these behaviors in different cultures. So if we were to take as an example, the trust of character behavior, manage expectations, underlying every single expectation is a need of some sort. Yeah. Well, those needs may vary from culture to culture. And those cultures may be within a particular organization or across cultural boundaries. The 3 dimensions of trust provide people with a language to be able to talk about trust-related issues, so they can arrive at a common understanding of how our behavior influences trust. We heard Dennis emphasize mutually serving intentions is essential. So how we keep agreements in one culture may be very aligned in building trust, but how we keep agreements in another culture may take a slightly different shape and form. So when we are working across cultures, the 3 dimensions equips that language and that understanding to be able to have trust-related conversations and to learn how to behave in ways that will consistently build trust across cultures. Now, this is extremely important because underlying all of it, of course, is how do we honor and respect the diversity of our various backgrounds, our points of views, our perspectives, and how do we foster cultures of inclusivity that have people feeling that there's the presence of an equitable work environment. Increasingly around the world, there's a heightening focus on initiatives centered around diversity and inclusion and equity. Well, for those to all come together, it requires a very strong foundation of trust.
Very nice. There was a similar question on almost on the same lines, which I think you addressed. Himadri was talking about the same, how to build trust from a cultural perspective, given the fact that we are all working across nationalities more often now than previously. Which of the 3 C's we would need to work on in such environments? So maybe the last piece of which of the 3 C's, Michelle or Dennis, you could respond with that.
Sure. Picking up on what Michelle just had mentioned, it's important because we're coming from different nationalities and different ways of practicing different behaviors. It's important that we do have a common language so that we have a shared understanding, first of all, what trust means. Now, how those behaviors get practiced in each culture might be slightly different, but because trust is universal, in any country, in any nationality, in any culture, it's important that we be able to talk about trust or the breakdown of trust in common languages so that we can begin to work through the issues, the concerns, and challenges, and then take action on them.
And Hamandri asked which of the 3 C's we need to work on. Really all 3.
Yeah.
But as a starting point, trust of character is foundational.
Yeah.
And that one specific behavior that we call manage expectations opens the door for an understanding of needs, the various needs that people have to be able to do their best work, the needs they have to support one another, to be effective and to serve the customers and the communities. Encouraging those mutually serving intentions is what helps us to understand what are the unique interests that each of us have and how can we work together to fulfill them. That trust of character opens the door for trust of communication. How will we talk with one another? How do we create a safe environment to put issues or concerns on the table? How do we make a safe environment to tell the truth about our thoughts, our feelings, our views, and our perspectives? How do we create a safe environment to give each other feedback in the highest, best interest to help us grow and develop, not just in our work, but as whole human beings? Because as we grow as whole human beings, we are best supported to bring ourselves to relationships with one another and serve our business, our customers, our communities, and one another. And that trusted capability is what helps us to continue to grow in our skills and our knowledge, and expand and deepen what we have to bring.
And I just want to add, these behaviors are not just appropriate for the workplace. They're definitely appropriate for those with whom you live with and love. So we're not just talking about a nice thing to have here. These are sound, these are foundational for sure.
Dennis and Michelle, that reminds me, as you were sharing about the trust model, even for Subramani and me and those of us in our team at Renergetics, we use this, the trust behaviors, this model as our Bible, our lighthouse. So every time we are in doubt, we walk our talk, we go back and look at the trust behaviors and say, okay, which of these behaviors do we need to use now to help us in the situation? And it is so beautiful and so powerful living it and actually experiencing it. It's a different experience altogether.
Oh, thank you.
Jesse, thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry, Subramanian, please. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was trying to add my starting point with Rena's, and I just wanted to share that with the audience. And my point when I heard them first time in one of the seminars, my first thought that came across my mind was, in my entire 30 years of career with corporate, and I want you all to reflect on this question, is how many times did we talk about trust? Or for that matter, in your workplace or in your career or currently wherever you are, whatever profession you are in, how many times, or do you even think about talking about trust? And ask yourself, when we all know that the trust is as powerful, as core and fundamental, why aren't we even bringing that discussion to the table? Let's reflect on that. Because my first thought that crossed my mind was, gosh, for 30 years I've been in corporate, and I all along knew that there were trust issues. And all along I knew I was trying to address that trust issue. But no point in time in my memory, and I've searched it multiple times, no point in time in my memory can I think of a dialogue or a conversation saying, boss or senior or whoever that person is, or a colleague or a team member, I think we need to talk about trust. I think we need to come and discuss few of these disconnects with good purpose. I have never had these conversations with these words. I have had all the vocabulary that I may have used, but I have never used trust. And I continue to ask myself, there must be something deep down that we believe intrinsically, implicitly, that we may not be able to explain what we mean by trust. And like Dennis had said in his intro video that he had shared earlier, trust means different things for different people. And trust, what it means to me and what it means to you, might be entirely different. And because it is emotionally provocative, understand what's happening with the dynamics. When you get emotionally provoked, you don't want to talk about that incident. And then it gets kind of layered down, and you kind of simmer over it, and each person will do differently, and that's how it happens. And so when I heard them talk during the seminar, my metaphor during that seminar was corporates, people walking around with bandages on their body, symbolic of the trust being broken or even betrayed.
It's interesting, Subramanian, that you share this. So just before our talk show, I was spending some time, in prayer, in meditating, and just kind of centering myself and seeing like what should be the theme, or like what could be a key message that we want to give the audience in this today's talk show. And interestingly, healing came to mind. Like healing and renewal. And in fact, there's that song "Heal the World" kept playing in my mind. And for me, that was a message that, the world needs healing and renewal more than ever before.
Yes.
So in that context, and in your work on trust, you also bring in rebuilding trust through healing. So we would like to hear from you. And I understand the book that you wrote on 7 Steps of Healing, the stories that heard from you are so beautiful. And could you share that, please, for our audience as well?
Oh, thank you, Jesse. I want to just first share a little bit of the story of how we came to the construct of healing and renewal, because it's interesting. Our clients, the leaders and the teams that we've worked with, have always really shown us where we need to go to be able to support them. In those early years, when we were researching trust, we made a very profound observation. The vast majority of time when we would sit down and ask people to talk with us about their experiences of trust being present in their relationships, often they would begin by talking with us about disappointments, hurts, letdowns, or even experiences of betrayal. So over the years, Dennis and I began to discover and learn, as well from our own life experiences, that in all relationships, we are going to be experiencing letdown. We all, at some point in time, may be hurt or disappointed or let down by somebody else. And the truth is, there may be times when others feel hurt or disappointed or let down by us. So for trust to be sustained, we all have to understand that we're human beings, and at times we're going to trip up. Trust is innately vulnerable. So with compassion, we need to learn how to trust again and trust again and trust again. And that's what allows us and supports us to be resilient. It's what allows us to deepen our understanding of ourselves and our relationships. So the healing and the rebuilding has come from our experience working with organizations, but the deepest insight actually has come from Dennis.
Well, with what is true for all of our models, there's a lot of academic and scholarly research that has gone into it, but that's not it. What's most profound is we have lived those different 3 dimensions. We have lived these 7 steps. In fact, how the 7 steps for healing first came about, I'm just trying to get this here. Oh, here we go. Okay, great. So how these first 7 steps came about was, I took a look at the process that I went through long before I met Michelle. I was in another relationship, and my wife said that she wanted to get a divorce, and that was just devastating to me. And I went through this whole process of, healing and renewal, but I didn't know what I was going through at the time. And I was going through, counseling and therapy, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, looking back, I put together these 7 steps, and it's a process of the healing and renewal through, first and foremost, acknowledging what has happened and the impact on not only yourself, but on others, and allowing those feelings to surface in very constructive ways, and getting support in order to be able to reframe the experience. And reframing the experience is very important here, because we need to take a look at what are the choices and the options moving forward. And what responsibility do I have to take in this, whether it be a breakdown or this disillusion of whether it be a marriage or even a working relationship.
Or a breakdown in collaboration among a team.
Exactly.
Taking responsibility is enormous, because we may not have responsibility for what contributed to a breakdown. So it was,
but we always have responsibility of how we respond.
Yes.
And how we behave.
There may be breakdowns in collaboration among a team when information is not shared as need be, or when it's not safe to make mistakes, or unrealistic expectations are set and people struggle to renegotiate them. Trust can break down in teams, and trust can break down in interpersonal relationships. And when that happens, it's fairly easy for any of us to slip into finger pointing,
and
blaming,
yeah,
criticizing, judging others. So we really do have a choice when trust has broken down.
Yeah.
We can choose to step into it and work through it, and actually come out strengthening the spirit of those relationships and ourselves. That requires the deep inner work and the willingness to consider, is there a way I might have contributed to the breakdown? The answer may be yes, or the answer may be no. But we always have responsibility for how we choose to respond.
right,
And move forward. And that's when we regroup and get clear on those expectations and those mutually serving intentions. And it's why, Jesse and Supermanian, one of the things that Dennis and I so appreciate about the two of you is, yes, your commitment to growing with us and learning the research and all of the tools and methods and techniques that you bring into your clients, but your commitment to living it. Because we do have models and frameworks and research and assessments that help leaders and teams know where to start. But trust building is not a cognitive process. It's what we live and embody within us. And as we embody it, we have more to bring to other people, more to bring to the world. And I think none of us can really even fully quantify the exponential impact that has in our communities and in our lives.
That's beautifully said. One of the best words that I can pick up, there were many, but it's one of the things that resonates most with me is embodying that behavior. And my learning across the journey, when we got certified, started doing the interventions in the corporate, plus we did the master certification. Along that journey, one of the biggest aha moments for me was you could be internally believing and you have the right intent and be talking with all the good purpose. But if you are not being present, when I say present, along with your body language, and if you're not congruent, and if the person on the opposite side does not see that congruence, then no matter how much your intent is good and how much you mean well, trust will not get translated. And trust will not get built or established until they see that congruence. So there are so many small nuances, but they are small, but have deep impact and long-term results on them.
Yes. Yes.
And so embody is one aspect of it.
Yep.
And Himadri, Dan was talking about and saying, responding to that point that I had earlier on, where he said, and when we internalize rather than openly discuss negative emotions related to trust, we set the stage for toxicity to develop. And that's exactly what happens.
Yes.
Now imagine you run team building efforts, you run team building interventions, you run team outings, and you do all of those recognition, employee engagement, all of that, which I have all gone through entire in my 30 years. But if you do not address trust,
That's right.
if you do not address trust, which is at the core of that,
Yep.
you're not going to see the results.
No, you won't.
No.
And when there's toxicity, underlying toxicity is broken trust.
Yes.
Underlying toxicity is vulnerability. You know, people tend to assume that it's big, big things that cause trust to break down, when in fact, our research has found that it's actually small, subtle, unintentional patterns of behavior that build over time. And as they build, it contributes to a more significant breakdown. And absent healing and renewal, what takes over renewal and robs the sustainability of trust is toxicity. It's toxicity. Underlying toxicity is the breakdown of trust.
Absolutely. And June Koo
Yes.
mentions that trust now more than ever is critical, particularly because we are working from home since COVID-19. And you're absolutely right, spot on, June Koo. It's yes, it is so critical right now. And we need to be able to put those three dimensions into practice, because let's face it, this is a behavioral approach. Trust is felt by how we show up and behave. And do we do what we say we're going to do? Do we deliver as promised? You know, how we manage our expectations under trusted character, and do we communicate openly and honestly? And do we help each other learn new skills as part of trust of capability, and helping each other learn and grow from those. So it is clearly the small things, as Geeta mentioned, the small things that have a big impact. And in fact, our research shows that 90% of the ways that trust gets broken are not the big things, but they're the little things that add up and accumulate and become big. And then people check out. They either walk out the door of a job, or they stay and they become the working wounded. You know, we talked about, being wounded metaphorically, but physically as well. And that's the same thing that happens in relationships too. This is not something that we just write in books, and so we're committed to practicing this each and every day. And boy, let me tell you, when you're married to your co-author, you get a chance to practice it each and every moment of every day.
That comes with relationships.
That kind of territory, right? It's part of your job description. So,
but Jesse and Renee, you know this as well as, we can't just talk about trust.
No.
We really can't. Talk isn't what builds it. Talk is a starting point for arriving at that shared understanding and opening those doors. But it's how we behave, and it's choice. It really is choice. At the end of the day, it's about how we approach our lives. And none of us lives alone on an island. We all live with other people. And it's those relationships that are the key to us doing our best work and having a healthy, thriving life in all facets of our lives. And
I just wanted to share to the audience that when we talk of trust, imagine when the trust is there, you feel almost an extra oxygen in the room, meaning your chest expands. And talking of energy, Dennis and Michelle, both of them can beat anybody in terms of keeping their fitness. And Dennis, when I was there for 2 days, he even ended up introducing me to his fitness person who trains him. even today, for that matter. And Dennis is absolutely can beat you to whatever challenges that you throw at him. And if that's not enough, you play a music, and Dennis can keep up with the dance as well, including the moves. Do not underestimate. It's not just trust that they're doing. They're pretty good at multiple things. So Anupriya,
Not bad for going on 71, right?
Well, hey, Simran,
yeah, absolutely.
moves as well when the music gets turned on.
Well, I try to keep up. But what happens is when Dennis starts dancing, nobody's around me. Especially the ladies are all around Dennis, and I have to kind of tell myself that I should continue to participate. So that's how it is. So Anupriya has been having multiple questions, so I want to address that. She earlier on had that managing expectations, then you have the risk of not overcommitting, and then she had how does one create an explicit agreement, spectrum of trust in personal relationships and professional engagements, which is kind of connecting to the managing expectations itself. And I think she's also highlighting the dual role that most of us in India and Asia, and I'm sure in some Western parts as well, where we have the responsibilities at home with the kids and our careers and many other extracurricular activities. So we wear multiple hats. How do you manage the spectrum of all of that? And so in both personal and professional.
It's a beautiful question, and Jessica and Subramanian, the two of you know that we actually built an entire workshop specifically around helping people manage expectations, and it's actually a workshop the two of you have led for hundreds of people. Because this question, how does one create an implicit agreement across the spectrum of trust? It's such a deep component, our expectations, because underlying every expectation is a need. And when our needs are not heard and our needs are not understood, it's a setup for hurt and disappointment and letdown. There are times when we may be experiencing others having expectations of us that are a little bit unrealistic. And are we not also predisposed to have expectations of ourselves that are perhaps unrealistic? So in our particular workshop, which we call Trust Workout, there are 3 steps that we all can take to help us manage these expectations. The first is to be clear about what the need is and set the expectation. We're to actually articulate the understanding of the need and the expectation. The second is to confirm the understanding of that need, and to openly talk about what do we need in order to meet that expectation. Is this expectation a bit unrealistic? Is the time unrealistic? Are the resources inefficient? And if they are, then create the room and the space to renegotiate that expectation. So if we think in terms of setting the expectation, confirming our mutual understanding of the expectation, and making it safe to talk about a possible renegotiation, we can keep everybody's interest in mind and work together to ensure that these expectations are explicit and that it's possible for us to achieve them. Particularly today, Subramani, as you mentioned, in COVID, how many people with young children do not have childcare support?
Yeah.
So, are there expectations that can be renegotiated in terms of timeline, or when we hold meetings, might somebody need to duck out for 3 hours in the afternoon because they need to tend to their children, but they're going to work later on that evening? When there's change and transition, we always need to go back to square one. Expectations. What do we need to be able to manage and move through this together in a healthy, trustworthy way?
Absolutely.
Beautiful. And Jesse?
So Priya asked a question: how do you start a conversation about trust?
Well, I'll tell you my favorite way to start a conversation about trust. I think there's something always very powerful to begin with a question around why. Why is trust important to you? Why might trust be important to me? And to begin a conversation, with a colleague, with a spouse, with a child. Dennis and I have had leaders we've worked with who literally have taught the three dimensions to their children.
Yes.
We had one leader who took them home and taped them on the refrigerator door in her kitchen and taught her three teenage sons trust of character, manage expectations.
You were supposed to be home by 11, right?
The expectation is you hang up your coat when you take it off. The expectation is you put the milk back in the refrigerator when you're finished using it. But I think that there's something very powerful in asking the question, why is trust important to you? And hearing what the other person has to offer. Why might trust be important to our happiness at home? Why might trust be important to our work on this team? Why might trust be important to serving our customers? What would it be like if our customers really knew that we heard and understood their needs? I think that question, Priya, why is trust important to you, is a very powerful way to start a conversation about trust.
Because underneath that conversation will bring forth their needs. And that's what you want to be serving. That's what you want to be getting at. It'll be their needs that will come forth under the question of why trust is important to you.
Nice, very nice, and it's so true. Again, I still see not many people understand that the trust dialogues can happen, and Reina Trust Model actually teaches you 16 different behaviors that enable you to have that conversation. Now, we all agree the power of the trust, but imagine if you were to start implementing it. And Priya, for example, your question, it's not just about how to start the conversation on trust. It's also a question about, am I living the behaviors of trust? Because if we are not walking the talk, then it's going to be difficult for us. And like Dennis and Michelle said that earlier, 95% of the time, trust is broken unintentionally.
Yeah.
People who break that trust do not realize that they have done that.
Yes.
And the person who has been hurt or feels betrayed is going through those negative emotions of hurt.
Pain.
And if that doesn't pain, so
Yeah.
true. It's pain that one goes through. And if we do not allow that pain to surface, and if we do not teach them how to bring that pain and that discussion out with us, because again, if I am hurt, I do not know anything else but to keep quiet. Because I dislike what happened, I would not come and talk to you. But we need to continue to talk about trust and say, this needs to be brought out onto the table, however painful it may be, because what we can do after that is going to be significantly stronger bonding and a much better relationship. And a relationship that is sustainable because it is based on the core point of trust.
Subramanian, it's everybody has a need to talk about trust. Everybody. And when we are in that pain, it's when we tend to pull back and withdraw. But if we can step in together, we have that ability to heal, to renew, to learn to trust again, and we grow in our understanding of ourselves and the human dynamic. But I think for for the wonderful people who are here with us today. I so appreciate that question. How do you start a conversation about trust? Because what we know to be true is every single human being across the world has a need to be trusted and to trust others. And we all have a need to talk. We all have stories about trust and hurt and disappointment and renewal. And we all have a need to tell our story in the interest of learning and growing and connecting as people on a human level.
And pain, as we were discussing, Connie Maita is writing, saying, after the pain discussion, forgiving is a gift to oneself and to the other person. Connie, good to see you here. And so true, yeah. Connie. And the fact that it's one thing to talk about the pain, but it's entirely another thing to forgive.
Yes.
And forgive requires a frame shift. And I say that because I don't know about the culture that you are coming from, but I think it's common across most of the cultures where we say trust is like the glass that it gets broken. Mm-hmm. And once it gets broken, the glass can never be repaired because the cracks will always show. But the reality of the research on trust that Denise and Michelle have done, it actually tells you that you can rebuild your trust after healing. So first it needs to be healed, and then you can rebuild that trust. And that's where the 7 steps of healing comes into play. So there is a lot here. There is a lot here that can happen. And there's a lot that we can leverage.
In fact, when you said trust can be rebuilt, I would like to take it to the next level. I think it can be strengthened and made even more beautiful.
Yes.
When you bring it together.
Yes.
You can be stronger.
Yes.
Yeah, and what Jessie is saying is exactly, she is actually referring to me, our team. That's exactly what's happening with us. Now, the aspect of trust and pain is when you're pained, you do not want to show your pain to the external world. And when you are challenged with that, we don't realize that when you show the pain to the external world, you are being vulnerable. And when you show that vulnerability, magic happens. Why? Because as soon as somebody sees your vulnerability, trust starts getting established. And I see Michelle wanting to express that because it's such a powerful topic here that I think we all are so not just enthused, we are fired up with the fact that there's so much good that can translate into this world through talking about trust, through learning about trust. Michelle.
Oh, I was just going to comment, Sir Mannion, on the insight you offered that when trust has been broken and we're feeling vulnerable, often we'll be pulling back and not talking about, we're not perhaps inclined to share that vulnerability. The 7 steps, what they provide for the world is a pathway, a roadmap to help us step into and move through that pain. And step 3 is actually support. How do we equip ourselves with support, and how do we give one another support? Because you both know when trust has been broken, either something big has happened or an accumulation of small minor things, it can throw us off our equilibrium. We can become a little bit disoriented and uncertain about what is it that we just experienced. And when we're not giving ourselves permission to really acknowledge what we're experiencing and allow ourselves to be supported to work through that, that's where we run the risk of the feelings and emotions going underground.
Right.
And toxicity can actually begin to breed. But when we give ourselves support and support one another to actually express our feelings and emotion, they become a resource and a tool for us.
Right.
They give us stepping stones to move through that disappointment. Step 6 is forgiving.
Right.
There's the first place we have to forgive is ourselves. And then through the forgiving of ourselves, we can we can release the energy to forgive others. But the point you offered, that we don't tend to talk, is a very powerful observation I wanted to help the listeners really hear, because it's when we run the risk of broken trust breeding toxicity, when in fact we cannot glue back together again that broken glass, but we can blow and create a set of glasses and a picture that does even more for us than that original glass did before it broke.
Beautiful. And imagine, I'm getting the metaphor in my mind when I think about trust. Trust is like the water for a seed which is dried and lying on the ground. Dried as in somebody in pain and not able to come out and feeling shriveled down because the energy is negative and it kind of squeezes your body and you're unable to feel the freedom or the ability to fly or flourish. And when you pour the water on that seed, which is trust, imagine the gift that you would give to anyone around you. Imagine if you were to give that water of trust to those people who are feeling wounded, despite their good intentions of building that relationship, they still continue to harbor that pain. And that's where I find myself. I had said in my last episode that trust actually takes you closer to divinity. I won't say much about this. Jesse, to you.
Yeah, I just realized that we have crossed over an hour, and I got so engrossed in this conversation. So I have a final question before we open up for the questions from the audience.
So we have been taking some of the questions already.
Yeah, right, and we have crossed 1 hour. Okay, so to build this high culture of trust in organizations, how does the RENA Trust work help leaders scale it up? Because it has to be scalable. So how do you manage that?
Well, we first take a synopsis. We take a sense of where the organizational dynamics are. And we do that in part with our suite of statistically valid and reliable assessments to measure where trust is strong and where it is vulnerable at either the leader, the team, or organizational, even customer levels. And from there, then we co-create with the client solutions. And often they are in the form of trust workouts. It could be they may need work on managing expectations or giving and receiving feedback or speaking with good purpose, etc. These are trust workouts that are skill-based and give leaders and their teams the skills and the tools to begin to build and practice and sustain trust, particularly in their organizations. And then over a period of time, 6 months, 9 months, a year, we reassess on where trust is and notice that, there's definitely positive differences that we have seen over the years. And not only just in how people collaborate, communicate, and engage with one another, but also we're talking about performance and financial result. We have clients who are blowing it out of the water in their companies, if they're not their industries, because they embraced trust. And we also taught these leaders how to teach their people how to not just role model these behaviors, but to teach their people how to practice these behaviors. And those companies are blowing it out of the water in performance and financial results.
Yeah, the other ways that we're able to go scalable, Jesse, is through our partnership with the two of you, right, and your leadership of trust building throughout Asia. And as master practitioners, you teaching leaders how to bring trust into their organizations, and the digital platform that has been launched that really does help trust building go throughout an enterprise, throughout a world where people can really collaborate and engage and make trust building a part of their everyday lives. The need is far bigger than just us. We bring it to the world through our partnerships and our collaboration with you, and how we together support the leaders that we serve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working and chatting with you all. The audience is having fun. There is one last question. Do we have time, Michelle and Dennis?
Sure.
Okay, so this is a question from Priya, and she says, what are some signs of trust issues at workplace?
Signs of trust issues at workplace, maybe the notice that people are holding back. It may be some signs that engagement scores may be sluggish. It might be, is there some potential turnover? Are there signs of toxicity? Are people talking about one another?
Are they
behind their
gossiping
back?
and backbiting?
Are they gossiping about one another? Is there blockages of information where it's difficult for people to get their hands on things? Are there silos? Are people working independently of one another versus across functional lines with one another? Is there a spirit of collaboration, or are people just having their heads down, focusing on what's directly in front of them? And what happens when there's a mistake made? How safe is it to admit that mistake, and what kind of support might people receive to work through it?
Absolutely. And how are people, how are their skills acknowledged and leveraged? And more importantly, do people help them learn and grow and learn new skills? And do they involve each other in decisions that affect their jobs and their lives, or are very siloed and very to themselves? So these are just some of the indicators, whether you're talking about trust of character, trust of communication, or trust of capability. I mean, you literally can go down the 3 dimensions of trust and those behaviors and see what's not working, to see some of the signs and indicators of trust being broken or breaking down within organizations and within workplaces.
Yeah, and also, and that's been exhaustive, the way I was running in my mind some of those points, and you were covering that as you went along. And some of the other points is, are you displaying the body language to show that you're open to receive feedback? Are you willing to be vulnerable? Are you allowing people to be vulnerable? And when someone does show vulnerability, how do we respond? Because the first time when I take courage and express my pain, I am actually showing courage to say that. And how do we respond to that?
Yeah,
exactly.
If I do not get a good response, next time I will not express. And the next time I will not express means that permanently I may shut down on that aspect of it.
Sure.
And that pretty much seals the capacity of the team. Because if you're doing extremely well and still not getting to the next level, and you've been performing relatively to whatever measurements and benchmarks you may have, you may be doing exceedingly well, but if you're not getting to the next level, it clearly means trust is missing. Because trust is the fact which will take you to the next level, because you need people to take risk. You need people to take risk to the point where you will get something creative or something totally unexpected that could be disruptive. So all of that. I think we had a great discussion, and Michelle, this topic, we all know we will continue to talk about it. Jesse and I do keep doing that. We figure layers and layers of it every time something occurs of it.
We're
We
never
continue
done, Subramanian. We're never done.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, I mean, I still would like to say that it's amazing what you have created. It's really amazing what you have come up with. And when I think about and reflect on the models and the 16 behaviors that you have put in, and across the cultures with our experiences that we have had with clients and personally as well, it's amazing. It's amazing to see how someone can translate trust and make it measurable. And that was the biggest aha moment for me in that seminar, because when I heard trust can be built and healed and rebuilt, my first metaphor was the plasters on people. And the second one was, how can you measure something that is not even tangible? So this is a great long topic, and it can continue to happen, and that's our intent as well. Trust Talk, like I said before, is focused on bringing the impact and showing the importance of what trust can do in individuals, in teams, and organizations. After having done everything, best practices, acknowledgement, recognition, employee engagement, I really want to challenge you and ask yourself, how good is trust in your organization, in your group, in your ecosystem? So with that, I would kind of pause here. Jesse, if you want to add something to that. Jesse, unmute yourself.
So sorry. Okay. What fascinates me is that a model as profound as the RENA Trust Building, the three C's, has captured, embodied the essence of trust building into 16 behaviors that, if we practice that, can so beautifully take us through this journey of trust building, building relationships, building teams, building organizations. I mean, they have made it look so simple. Practice these 16 behaviors, and you are building trust and taking your relationships, your business, your family. It's so systemic, of course, but that is something which, having applied it and practicing it myself and in our teams and in the people we work with, it's so beautiful how they brought out these 16 behaviors um, that embodies trust building. So hats off to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate the comments that are coming in on the bottom of the screen there. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
And
we're building a fair bit of followership, and we're hoping to continue to build that.
Wonderful.
good.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, we've thoroughly enjoyed being guests on your show today and look forward to many other conversations.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we continue together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dennis, Michelle, Subramanian, and Jessica, for sharing your insights on healing and rebuilding trust. And for all of you who have attended, participated, thank you so much. Please continue to tag us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Let us know what are your thoughts from today's show and what resonated with you. We would love to hear what you'd like us to cover in our upcoming episodes. And as I've said it before, if you see value in what you saw today, please share it with your friends. Maybe you could inspire them to building trust. Till then, thank you for tuning into Trust Talks, brought to you by Renergetics Consulting, where we transform people, transform businesses. Have a good day, folks. Take care.
Yeah.